Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bushels. Today's guest is Doug Goyings from Ohio, a fourth generation farmer who's seen firsthand how weather, prices, and time shape the heart of America. We talk about the grind of spring planting, the balance between family and the farm, and what it really means to keep the legacy alive when everything around you keeps changing. Let's get into it. How's everything going with you?
Oh, pretty good. We're getting ready to tile another field. Got a neighbor, we do some custom ditching, and we're going to start another field and start installing the outlet in that today.
Is this like a wheat field that you just harvested?
Yes.
You don't want to be ripping through a fully tasseled cornfield this time of year, probably.
No, and the corn's about 10 foot tall and beautiful green, the majority of it.
Cool. I always like to start off by asking our guests a little bit about who they are, where they're from, and just a little bit like on the personal level. We know this is about farming and everybody here loves farming. I'm sure you have stuff you love doing outside the farm and family and all that stuff. So if you'd fill us in, that'd be awesome.
Okay, my name's Doug Goyings. I'm from Northwest Ohio. I've farmed all my life. I decided a long time ago I wanted to farm before I graduated, and I took college prep the whole way through school and got to be a senior. It's like, I'm going to farm. I'm not going to go to college. So I latched on to start farming right out of school.
I know you and I talked about family and all that stuff.
Yeah, I got married 2 years out of high school and been married to the same beautiful lady. Got two kids, a boy and a girl. My son farms with me full time, and my daughter worked for the Ohio State University Hospital. And we've
Okay.
lived within a mile of where I grew up. I was a quarter mile to the north of me, and I moved a mile to the east, and then I moved back to the home place. So I'm in the home place.
There you go. So your family, you shared a little bit about what your kids are doing. So the boy is at the farm full time now?
Yes.
Okay.
And he has twin boys that I hope enjoy farming at some point. They're 9 now, so it'll be a while before they're going to make that decision. They like to help out. We had a building site we tore down, and they're digging a hole to bury the foundation in that. So at 9 years old, they like to run the backhoe.
Really? I bet you enjoy having them around the farm, don't you?
Yeah, they got four-wheelers, and we got a path across the field so they can ride four-wheelers over to see us and don't have to go out on the roads. Makes it real handy. And then there's a big ditch right beside their house. My son bought a container, one of these shipping containers, cut the end out of it so we could use it as a bridge. And it makes it real nice to run four-wheelers and that through it. And Rangers.
I've never thought of that. That's actually a good idea.
Makes a nice bridge.
Is there ever an instance where flooding would push that down?
No, it doesn't flood there. It never gets that deep. We're pretty flat county, so we won't have a whole lot of speedy water when it leaves. When we get too much rain, it just stands and takes a few days to get rid of it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I might have to do that sometime. So you talked a little bit about the grandkids out there. How often are they out there? And do you always have snacks on hand for them?
Yeah, whatever dad's driving, they like to come to the farm to make sure they can get in on something. Because I usually do all the trucking. I take seed and fertilizer to planters and go get parts or whatever's needed, and I'm running around all the time. So they usually try to ride in the tractor or combine with their dad.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun having kids around the farm, but you definitely have to be on alert. They like to chase after equipment, don't they?
Yes, they do. He's definitely taught them very well about watching where we're at and what we're doing to make sure they don't get in the road.
Just a couple of grandkids for now.
Yes, my daughter, she has two stepdaughters. She doesn't live close to here. She's about 2 hours away. We don't see her as much. We talk to her frequently, and we like to go down and help them. They got a cottage down in Hocking Hills. We remodeled that house down there one winter, and then they rent it out to people in the summertime now.
There you go. So does the family still get together quite a bit?
Yeah, my sister and her brother, and we usually have Christmas and Thanksgiving and Easter together. And then we get together on the other side of the family too. So busy at times at holidays trying to get everybody arranged in the right places so we can see each other.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot, but it's probably good, isn't it?
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to start farming? So you decided in high school you're going to farm. Where was your dad at in that situation in terms of succession and all that stuff?
My grandpa was still alive then when I got out of high school. So my dad was farming with his dad. And then when I got out of high school, there wasn't enough room for me to really join the farm because it didn't farm that much. So I got into the milk fed veal calves, which is a very labor intense. Got to be there twice a day, every day, 7 days a week. And you feed them milk is all you feed them for 4 months. And then they go to the specialty markets of the Jewish people have to have kosher veal. And that's what I was raising it for, is a kosher veal market. So that gave me my foot in the door. And I knew I didn't want to do it all my life. So I started buying farm ground on the side and kept picking up acreage around me. And I raised veal calves for 17 years. And then I got out and I'm just a grain farmer now. Gives you a little more flexibility. Get livestock, you're really tied down. You really got to have somebody to help you so you can take off time sometimes.
How many bottle calves did you have?
212.
That's a lot. In high school, we had 36 as a side project, and it was just Holsteins, and I think we took them all the way to 1,500 pounds, but it was a lot of work. 4:30, 5 o'clock every morning, but we didn't just do milk the whole time. We started them on milk, and then incorporated some dry feed, and then transitioned from milk to water. But it was a lot of work. Did you have to go through the castration and all that stuff?
Now they left them as bulls because we only had them for 4 months and they really grow fast. We get them in 100 pounds, and when we shipped them out, they're around 400 pounds. And all they get is milk. And they were in pens, which they've done away with the pens now because these pens, they had a chain around their neck and they stood up and laid down. That's all they did all day. They had a 2 foot wide stance. The PETA people didn't like us having the calves tied up like that.
That's how we did it 15 years ago. We had an old hog building. It was real small, but everything was up elevated 2 foot, and they kind of had slats, and like a kind of a head gate or whatever, and they're chained up there.
Yep, they were only about a foot off the ground. And then the floor was all sloped to the other end, so it would go into a pit so we could pump it out. So it was a very specialized building.
That's exactly how we did it. How would you get the milk around? Because I know how we did it. I'm curious to see how you did it.
We had an inch water line, a PVC pipe that went out, and then we had 4 different outlets in the barn. So you'd pump it out there, and then they had a gas nozzle to gauge how much you're going to put in the buckets. And you put a rod on the side of the nozzle, how much depth you want to get in them. And you'd measure them and weigh them out. And every day you about increase their volume. So they really ate a lot of it. And some of them were real aggressive. And some of them would pull back and wait until you leave, but other ones try to push you out of the way trying to get into that milk.
Can't even get the nozzle in the bucket because they're so aggressive.
Yes, a nice warm milk. We mixed the milk replacer with warm water. It was nice and warm for them all the time, and they really liked that.
We only had 36, but we had a 55-gallon barrel we cut in half, elevated. And then we had to put in like a tankless water heater so we could control the temperature. So we'd mix it all up. And then we had a sump pump connected to a water hose, like you said, with the gas nozzle. It was a lot of work, but it was kind of rewarding at the time.
I always followed my calves when they'd ship them out. We'd load them up and drive all night to the packer because they were very temperamental about the way you had to raise them. You had to have very little iron in them because iron makes their meat red and they wanted it pinker. So that's how they grade them when they go through the grading process. So you want them as weak as possible, you might say, with no iron, but you want them to grow as fast as possible with a lot of protein. So it was a kind of double-edged sword there. You had to walk that tightrope because there was very little give. They would really be particular on grade if you got too much iron in there.
I remember the transition from bottle calves to just calves, putting them out in the feedlot or whatever at 300-400 pounds. I think we went a couple months without losing one. We only did one cycle. Then as soon as we put them outside, I think we lost a couple of them. So it's ironic. You think you'd lose them early on, but we got them all the way through the bottle feeding stage, and as soon as they were outside, we lost a couple. I think it was a wet fall or something.
Yeah, I can see where it'd be hard. At least mine, they were always in that crate, so you could check them very easily and see which ones got sick. And we did all our own medication of them, and we had a vet. We had to get the prescriptions and that, so we could give it to the individual calves. And we worked real close with the vet to make sure we could use everything. And then you had withdrawal periods, and usually once you got them over 200 pounds, you usually didn't have much sickness. It was that first month or two is where it was the worst, about sickness.
Because I know when we were doing Holsteins, you were getting them in when they're a day or two old.
Yes, they were all Holsteins and all bulls. They were supposed to be all bulls. Once in a while, they'd slip one in there. It wasn't a bull, but I think somebody just didn't look very good.
Holsteins, of course, they'd probably be all bulls because they'd probably want to keep heifers.
Yes.
You don't think you want to get back into it, huh, Doug?
No, too labor intense. And I think the market has really shrunk in the years. I'm not sure why, but I know there used to be 3, 4 guys around that I knew that did it, and they're all out of it too. So I don't know of anybody that's raising milk-fed veal calves anymore.
When I did it, it was 15 years ago, and we were buying them $100 a pop. Can't do that anymore.
No, that's for sure.
They might be $800 for a 100-pound Holstein.
Yeah, they would be considerably expensive now.
Yeah. So that's how you got started back at the farm. And your dad was farming, and your grandpa were both farming when you came back.
Yes. And then my grandpa passed away, and my dad got part of his farm. He had 2 brothers and a sister that got ground too. And so I started farming full time with my dad. And he'd help me a lot of times with the veal calves until I got big enough that I got out of the veal calves. And I kept buying acreage, and things would happen and we pick up more acreage. And I got so I didn't have to have the calves anymore. So that barn, we bale all our straw. So the barn that we had the veal calves in was only 9 foot tall because of heating and cooling it. So we went in there and we raised that barn up 8 feet so we could store straw in there. And we started with small squares and we baled those for years and years. And about 4 years ago, we went to the big squares because you couldn't get labor. The small squares just couldn't get enough help. And you could go so much faster with the big baler now.
It's pretty intensive doing the small squares, having somebody on the rack and then throwing it in the loft and stacking them by hand. It's not really an easy way to do it.
And then there's a job hauling them out of the barns too. You got to have a lot of labor, stack them in there. We had a self-propelled bale picker upper that we could pick them up and we get 100 and I forget how many, 120 bales on the stacker. Then you take it and dump it by the barn and then you stack them in the barns. And then we had a loader that we could pick up racks of them and put them back into the back of the semi. And then we'd have to drag them to the front and stack them all. So it was very labor intense.
When you were storing it, did you have to throw salt down under each row?
No, they were all cement floors, so you didn't have to worry about them too much unless you got the bales wet, and then they always mold in the bottom. But that's something you really watch for. And the same way with the big squares now, we got the same issue. If you get them a little wet, they'll mold on the bottom. But all the barns we store straw in have cement floors, so we don't really worry about it a whole lot.
All this is straw bales. Is that what it is?
Yeah, so we just bale straw. And then as soon as we get done baling straw, we plant double crop soybeans. And hopefully they'll make a crop before it gets frosted. We didn't have enough rain when we first harvested them this year, so I'm not sure whether the beans are going to make it or not before a frost. Might get frosted off. So
When did you plant your soybeans?
as we were harvesting, we'd harvest a field and the straw is too damp to bale right away. So we got a 30-foot drill that we can drive in between the windrows of the combines. So we got a 45-foot heads, and then we use a 30-foot drill, and we can drill in between the windrows and get the beans planted. We like to have them done the same day we cut the wheat. So in case you have a rain, it gets them growing right away.
What kind of maturity of beans are we talking?
You use about anything you can because it just depends on the variety, whether they mature quickly. And then you got to hope for the year. With the ones that we planted this year were 3.2s. Last year we had some 1.8s, and they were a real small bean, especially crop bean, but the market kind of fell apart on those, so we won't raise those again. And we ended up selling for regular beans, and they were really small. Specialty markets pay dear if you can find a market for them, but the buyer that we had, he got broke up with whoever he was connected to, so he couldn't sell them, so we had to sell them to the open market then.
Yep. How old was your grandpa when he finally passed it on to your dad?
He was 86 when he passed away. How many years ago that would have been? Trying to think when he did retire, because he retired several years before he passed away there. Same way with my dad. He made it to 92. I think he was 71 when he retired. Then he just helped a little. And my father-in-law used to help us too. He retired at 55, and I took over his farm then, and he loved driving combine, but he didn't like the other management stuff. So he let me take over everything else, and he liked to drive combine. So made it good for me. I had a good combine driver, and we get the stuff done, but I made all the decisions for the farm.
When your grandpa retired and your dad took over full time, how old was your dad at that point?
Nah, I don't really remember how old he would have been because he didn't do a whole lot after I graduated from high school. And that was 75. I'd say he was in his early 70s also.
I'm talking, how old was your dad when he took over the reins of the operation and your grandpa stepped aside?
He would have probably been in his early 50s.
Really?
With longevity, you get age before you take over completely. I took over, think what year I took over. Must have been in 80, 89. So I'd have been 20, 30.
Did they farm together for quite a few years then?
Yes. And then when he was out of the picture, then I started to get more farm ground. And one year I doubled our acreage. I picked up my father-in-law's ground and I bought a farm and I rented 2 other farms. So we had quite a transition there in 87. We doubled everything. And then we had the drought of 88. A lot of people recognize that that's a bad time. We had the drought of 88 when I doubled my acreage. So it wasn't a very good year to double your acreage. It worked out in the end. And then as we kept growing then, in 2012, we had another drought, but we had a big storm that came through and it actually hit the grain site, and it was a small tornado, we still say, took our grain site down. We had 13 bins in it, and they totaled them all except for one. Took down our legs, and we had to rebuild everything in 2012, which is a major task. We'd like to do all the work ourselves. We hired a crew to come in and help us partly, and they were making mistakes. And I guess the final straw was they were putting buckets on the leg to put the leg up. They had 3 guys all day putting buckets on the legs. And the guy came back that night after they got that done, and he said, "You forgot to put washers on them." So the next day they did the same thing again, putting washers on the buckets. That was the final straw. We said, as soon as we can get rid of them, we're moving them out. We can do it quicker ourselves.
And that's what you ended up doing?
Yep. So we built all the bins ourselves. We poured new foundations for some. We remodeled when we did it. And we had a big pit, so we didn't have to change the pit, but we had to put a new leg into the pits. And we built bins, and we got them all rebuilt. And now my son has had the last two bins. We hired somebody else to build them because they were so tall. We didn't want to take the risk when they got that tall. So we hold a little over 800,000 bushel now, and we built all the bins except two of them. We like to do stuff ourselves.
How long did it take you to build those bins?
It's like the insurance guy came to us when they went down. He says, I'll give you 6 months. We told the guys that it took us almost 30 years to get all these built, and you want us to rebuild everything in 6 months. And it took us a little over 2.5 years to get the base back together. And then we started expanding again. So it takes a long time because there's a lot of work to build a bin. We had to put new foundations in, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of rebar.
How many people did you have once you got the cement poured and everything and started with the peak?
You build the roof, and then you got to jack it up and put another ring on. And then you jack it up and put another ring on. So you got to keep adding to the bottom is what you do. It's very time consuming. We had 8 to 10 people is what we'd like to try to get the family, because a lot of the work is just pushing a bolt in and putting a
Holding
nut
the
on it.
branch. Yeah.
And then to tighten them, my son and me did all the tightening. So we knew the torque was about right. We had one guy that would follow us around on the outside, and we'd be on the inside putting nuts on and tighten them. And it was a very labor intense. If you ever watch somebody build a bin, it's quite a project.
I've done it. You got to have some earmuffs on the inside, don't you?
Yes, very noisy.
When was this, 2012?
Yeah, 2012 was when everything went down. June 29th, we were done harvesting wheat that year because it was an early wheat year, and we were baling small bales yet when the storm hit. And the wind was so strong, the small squares rolled across the field into the ditch where the thrust of the storm went. Pretty strong to blow around a square bale on the ground, laying there, roll it in the ditch.
When you were building those, the power tools probably weren't as good as they are now, compact and power wise and all that stuff.
Yeah, we had all electric impacts, and the new battery ones have been so much nicer.
Oh, you had them all corded?
Yes.
You just didn't have much control on them. Like the new ones, you have different settings, so you could probably torque it down if you want. The bins we did were pretty small, 25,000 or something like that. Still probably took us a couple months.
Our biggest bin, before we hired any done, we did a 160,000 bushel bin, 60-foot diameter. And there's a lot of bolts in a bin like that.
Then you just rent the jacks from somebody?
I was looking for a used grain leg, and up in Michigan, they had a big auction. They had a grain site that was going to sell. I went up there to buy the legs, and well, the legs were junk. The bins were in good shape, so I didn't buy any legs. I just bought used bins, and we were up there tearing them down and taking them out. We took a forklift up there, and a guy had bought some other bins right beside us in that same site, and he needed a forklift. He said, I'll make you a deal. I'll let you use my jacks if I get to use your forklift. So we worked together with a guy that he was from Southern Ohio. He had these brand new jacks. He bought them for this job, and we actually used them before he did to tear the first bins down. So it worked out real good. When we brought them home, then we rebuilt them. He let us use the jacks to rebuild them. So it worked out good for both of us.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were putting up that many bins, if it just made sense to just go buy them or what.
He would let me use them, so we didn't have to buy them. Luckily, it worked out good.
So if you had to put up more bins, you said your son hired the last two up. Are you kind of done with your bin building?
I wouldn't say that, because about the time I say that, my boy will come up with another expansion joint. The one they had built this time, was trying to think how many rings tall it was, but it holds 200,000 bushel, and it was a 60-foot diameter too. So we had to put a conveyor on top to get it out to that one because it got out of the center. And then everything, our whole grain site all comes back into the main pit. So we got overhead bins to load out with. They hold 4,000 bushel. And I mounted gear motors and cameras so you sit in the cab of the semi and push a button and open the doors and fill the semi. It takes 2 minutes to fill a semi with overhead like that. We can load out quickly.
How long does it take you to unload with your pit?
Our pit is 1,500 bushel, so we can dump a whole semi and leave, go back to field and let it elevate it up. Got a 6,000 bushel an hour leg, and once in a while we'll push that leg to the limits, trying to run 2 combines. You can get a lot of grain in there quickly that way.
Ever have anybody forget to open the tarp or let the air out of the bags?
We don't let any air out of the bags. I've watched a lot of guys do it, but we've never had any problems. And it seems like we're going fast enough that we don't want to have the chance to have to do them. So thank goodness it works for us.
I've heard that the bags can blow on someone if you unload too fast.
Yes, I've heard that too, but we open those doors wide open and dump them completely. You really got to watch the tarps once in a while. We only had one time it ripped a tarp. Somebody
Sucked it
forgot to
right
open a
in.
tarp. Yeah. But the
Well,
majority of the time it works out.
at least it ripped the tarp. If there's enough suction, it could cave in the sides too.
Yes.
Cool. So how old's your boy now, the one that's farming with you?
Let me say, he was born in 84. He's 40 now, 39. Got to do my math backwards there. 7, 16, 41 now.
There you
So
go. Oh, what's the transition look like right now? Is he kind of making all the calls, or are you still the head honcho?
I let him make a lot of the calls anymore because he likes the challenge of doing it. So I let him go ahead and do it. And when I was growing up, I expanded a lot and my dad never held me back. I told my son that a long time ago. I said, I'm not going to hold you back. Doesn't mean I want to expand anymore, but I'm not going to. You'll have to do it on your own. So it's worked out good that he likes that extra job. And we do some work for the neighbors now. We got one neighbor, we do 500 acres of corn for him every year. And I got another neighbor now, he wants us to do 100 acres for him every year. So we keep expanding. And so we're a little over 5,000 acres now. When I started farming, we farmed 600. So had a little bit of a transition.
I would say so. I'd say that's a pretty good jump, isn't it? You
Yeah,
ever have
took a lot of years.
you ever have to jump in and give some advice for your boy, like, oh, I wouldn't have done that or any of that stuff?
Now, when there's something that takes a major decision, we talk to each other a lot. Like when we're updating equipment, that he's buying half of the equipment now, so that when I retire, we won't have it so much to split up at the end there. So it's going to be a big enough challenge anyhow.
Yup. Yeah, and then once you kind of move on from the farm, his boys will probably be about, I don't know, getting pretty close to want to spend all day at the farm, hopefully.
Yes. And we have 2 full-time workers now because we just needed more help. So we got 2 full-time. And then he's got a nephew that's living with him now that's 14. And he seems like he likes to enjoy the farm. So he ran the big baler this year for us, and he'll do some more work. We'll keep working him in there to get him to do more experience. So he seems to enjoy it. So that's a good thing too.
Looking back, even before you were old enough to maybe even run equipment on the farm, what are some of your earliest memories from the farm when you're out there with your dad or grandpa?
When I was 12 years old, we started baling a lot of straw. And then when my brother, when he turned 16, is when we were starting all this extra straw. We used that to buy cars with. So it worked out real good for both of us. My brother got a car, and then a couple years later, then I got a car, and we used the straw money to buy the cars for us. So that was one of the big memories, having big baling days. And we always had to have a big group of them. So they were always small square then. So it was definitely, we had a baling crew, 8 to 10 guys. A lot of times we had to keep up. We got up to where we were in the 2 balers, and it takes a lot to get around 2 balers.
The real question is, what kind of cars were you buying?
My brother got a Grand Am, and I got a Cutlass Salon, a full-size Oldsmobile,
What year was it?
two-door. It had been 70. Let me see. I got mine in 74.
That was right on the back end of muscle cars, wasn't it?
Yeah, my brother, he jacked his car up, Holly carburetors on it, and loud exhaust. And he was coming home from college and he got ran off the road and he totaled that car. So they got the Grand Am the next time. That one he didn't modify as much as the other one he did. So
Yeah, I think right around 1970 is when they transitioned into more conservative in terms of power.
yes.
You probably didn't want the 5-year-old cars back then, but those are the ones that are worth money now.
Yes, there's a lot of collectors for those older cars. I'm not as big of a collector. My son would like to collect more than I do, so
You
he's
still
he's
got
got
some
an old
around?
he's got an old pickup that he's gonna remodel and fix all up. My father-in-law still has a '65 Corvette that's in mint conditions. It's all original, so that thing will be very expensive to get rid of.
I had a '67 Camaro a few years ago, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work too.
Yes.
But you don't think about it at the time. You think, "Am I driving now that could be worth a lot of money in 30 years?" I don't know if there'll be any of those cars again.
When I was little, I bought a calculator. It cost me $200, and all it did was a simple plus and minus and division. And I've always been into technology. So we got into the GPS early. Before my son went to college, we had GPS like 3 years before he went to college. And he actually knew more about the GPS stuff than the professor did at college because we'd been running it. We had the first base station in the area, so we could get our RTK steering. With technology, we just keep expanding it. And it's like installing drainage tile. We use GPS for that. You drive a field to get your topography, and then you come back to the computer and you draw a map up. It shows you exactly the grade of the field and where you need to put outlets and laterals, and you can make that all on the computer program. You just pick the string you're on by the number and install the tile, and it's all GPS coordinated now.
What software do you use?
We use Trimble for the drainage part of it because they're big in that. And then we're using John Deere as the steering for the other tractors because Trimble was falling behind on getting their tech people out, where John Deere, they had better tech people that would help you connect stuff up. When you have troubles, you got to have somebody there now. You can't wait a few days and get somebody to come up to work on stuff. So we've been very aggressive on technology to keep it up.
When you're mapping out this tile, are you using Trimble software or is it SMS?
Yeah, Trimble software.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know what they had for software.
Yeah, they got a drainage program that's really good. You can see so easily when you put it on your computer screen, you can zoom in on it and get your different grade heights you need. And it tells you how deep it needs to be. And if it's shallower than what the outlet's going to be, it gives you an exclamation point so that you got to adjust something. And it's worked out real well for us. We go from 500,000 to 1,000,000 feet of tile a year we install. So
Really?
we do a lot of tiling.
You just have a pull behind unit?
No, we got a one of a kind, a 6-wheel machine is what I started with. You sit there and watch that wheel go around very slowly. And I came up with the idea that put a wheel on the back of a Cat Challenger tractor. I had bought a 55 Challenger, a tractor, and I mounted a wheel on the back of it. The company that made the machines said I couldn't do that. I'd ask him, I said, well, what part can I do? And he'd come up with something that I couldn't do. And I said, yeah, we can take care of this and that. Finally, he says, I'll build you the wheel if you want to build the rest of it. So he helped me make the gearboxes and everything because they ran it right straight off of the motor, these pumps, where I ran through the PTO to do it. So we had to have a gearbox to increase the speed by twice. You had to have everything, all the hoses and cooling lines, and there was a lot of work to do it, but it's worked out really good for us. We're actually on the 6th tractor now. We started with 220 horse, and now we're running 440 horse on the front of that wheel. And we can go almost as fast as they do with the plows because when you plow it in, most guys dig a hole, put your bucket in the hole, and take off, go to the other end. Then you got to come back and start all over again. Where when we tile, We cut just above the outlet, so you can go over the outlet, you go to the other end, you pick it up, and you turn around and you ditch back the other way. So you can ditch both ways, and you never have any run time where you're just running empty. And with the GPS coordinates and that, it knows exactly where everything's at. So it's worked out real well. We can get a lot done in a day.
You got a couple of crews, one person feeding the tractor and one person doing all the connections and filling holes.
Yeah, we usually have one or two guys. Sometimes we have to have two guys make connections because they get behind. And then backfilling, we got a big blade so that we use it on a tractor. And that's on a 400 horse tractor too. So we can go fairly fast and to backfill them. So we can get way behind, but we can catch up quickly with backfill. And the biggest thing is making the taps. Make sure you make that tap correctly so it doesn't break down. And we've got it down to where we can do pretty good. One guy's got to run the tile cart all the time, stringing tile. Keeps that guy hopping too.
What size diameter are you using on your tile?
We'll use 4-inch for the laterals, and then we'll run up to 15-inch for outlets, depending on what we got to go through on hill wise or how far and how many of them we put in. Just depends on the field. The field we're putting in now, we're putting in a 10-inch outlet on part of it, and then we're putting in 2 6-inch outlets on it too. So it just depends on the topography of the fields.
How many acres can you get done in a day?
I can't tell you how many acres. I know we try to go 10 to 12 rolls. So that's over 30,000 feet in a day.
What does everybody space the tile where you're at?
We're down to 25 feet. We had a couple experimental fields. We went 15 on one field and 20 on another field, but we really don't think you can justify the extra tile. It didn't seem like it helped that much in yield. We like to run them as shallow as possible. We like to go 18 to 20 inches of cover so that the water can get to the tile quickly and be gone.
I used to think the water had come from the top straight in the tile, but it's when the water table rises up to the tile, isn't it?
Yes, we try to keep the laterals high enough above the outlet that the laterals drain out completely into the outlet quickly so we don't have backlog in the tile so it can run in it very quickly.
Yeah, all that stuff's way above my head. Just another day in the life of farming with Doug. You got it all figured out.
Yeah, we've done a lot of things. My wife, we laugh about if somebody tells you you can't do it, that's awful to tell me that because that just makes me all the more wanting to do it. The house we live in now was my grandparents', and the basement was bad from when it was built. This was the second house on an old foundation. So we had a crew come in and raised the house up, poured a new basement, and then I went to remodeling, rewired the whole house, put all new plumbing in it completely, all new wiring, and took all the oak boards around the bottom and refinished them all so it looked like new. So we've added on the house twice since then. We added on a family room and a big garage, and we added on a master bedroom and a master bath on the main floor. So I've done a lot of remodeling besides farming. And my son, he built his house. It's insulated styrofoam blocks, and then you put cement in between them. So it's called ICF blocks. We built his house all ourselves, except once we got the basic house done, we had a guy come in and do the drywall. We wire it and everything, but we don't like doing drywall, especially guys that are very good at that. So we do everything else except the drywall now.
What'd you have to do? Cut with the hot knife to embed that wire?
To do what now?
So I imagine the drywall went straight on the styrofoam on the inside without
Oh, yes.
studs.
And what they have is inside that styrofoam block, every 16 inches, they have a piece of plastic. And the plastic is like 2 inches wide. So you got a little bit of area where you can put your screw, about like putting it in a 2x4. You got a piece of plastic you screw it to. It all has the same plastic in it. So no matter where you go, you can find it every 16 inches, there's going to be a stud there of plastic to hook your drywall to it.
But what about your wires? You probably had to like melt a little groove to run your wires laterally, didn't you?
Yeah, I forget what kind of tool it was called, but it gets extremely hot and you groove it out and run your electric lines in it all. And yes, it was a project. And then we try to run a lot of them overhead and bring them down on the main floor. And then in the basement, you could run them up in the floor and run in the floor joists and drop them down. So it was quite the project to get everything we wanted.
Just the planning of where all your wiring goes is probably the biggest challenge. Running it's no problem.
Yeah, there was definitely a challenge trying to get everything where we wanted it in the house. Because if you get to the outside walls, that's the only place we had to groove it because the inside walls, we didn't have insulation. So you could put your plugs in that on the inside walls or your switches and that. So we didn't have to meld a whole lot of it in because your interior walls are just like a regular home.
What do you think of that setup with the styrofoam blocks? Is that going to be the future?
It would be the future. The cost of installing it is higher, but it's a stronger home. So if you had a tornado came in, the only thing it would destroy is the roof. It'll take the roof off of it because they're not cement. It's just a regular studded roof where your walls, they don't collapse. You got 6-inch cement wall. It's pretty hard to move a 6-inch cement wall.
Yeah, I suppose having the upper level above ground being cement when normally that's not the case on a regular house.
Now,
And it stay insulated pretty well.
yes, it's very well insulated and you got 3 inches of styrofoam on the outside of the cement. You got 3 inches on the inside of the cement. And then the attic and that we blew in. And it's really quiet. You don't hear the noises because of that wall being so much styrofoam and that. It absorbs all your sounds, which is really nice too. You don't hear the wind blowing as much or anything.
Was it like putting Legos together around the windows, or do you send designs in somewhere and they send you what you need?
It's like Legos. You hit building blocks. You got to make them all come out and then you have to cut them down to fit a windows in or doors in. It was a project to get the windows and doors and everything in. And the guy was really impressed with how we did them. He said, most of the homes, they come and inspect them before you pour the foundation to make sure it meets the way they want them built. And the guy was really pleased with the way we built it. So it made us feel good that we did something right.
Did you have to use lumber around like the door frames and all that stuff?
Yes.
How'd you
And it
attach
worked
that
out
to
real
this?
good.
How'd you attach that to the styrofoam?
And you make your blocks so that the bottom was the worst. You had to vibrate underneath the windows because you got your board laying there, but you don't want an air gap under the window. We use vibrators to make the cement go around the windows and doors. Mostly the windows because the doors usually go to the next floor, but the windows and that, you're just part way up. So they were a little harder to put together.
But after you put the styrofoam, it's probably just a square with styrofoam on all four corners, and you probably have to put lumber in there before the windows, right?
Yes. We put a square of wood around in there. Use 2x10s, get the depth, or the 2x12s, and
What were those attached to? Did they not get
that
attached to this?
styrofoam has plastic in there, and then you hook rebar into it. We stuck rebar down all the walls for stability. So it was
Okay.
definitely a project.
Yeah, I didn't know you mentioned that the styrofoam had plastic. I figured it's just on like the outside and inside facing, not the ends that the window would be touching.
Yeah, it's in the center. All the plastic, you can't see any plastic. All they got little dots on the wall on the edge of it. So you can see where you're going to put your screw in because they don't want anything to go straight through from the outside to the inside because you lose your efficiency of insulating then.
I'll have to look into that if I ever have to build a house.
And on the internet, you can find anything today. ICF though, just remember that.
Yeah, you guys must like keeping yourself busy if you're building bins and building houses. Probably good talent to have then.
It gives a little break from the normal farming routines. And then we haul all our own grain. We work with a local elevator for corn They got a feed mill right here in town, about a half mile away. We can get like 40,000 bushel a day hauled in there. They'll shut down the elevator for other people, and so we can haul. We can put 2 trucks on it. We can keep their pit full. And then our soybeans we haul to central Ohio. It's about a 2-hour drive, and those are exported directly to Japan. In our wheat market, we go directly to the mills. We're hauling wheat now. We truck everything ourselves. We had several semis to do it.
Yeah, there's always something to keep you busy at the farm, isn't there?
He used to say you only work 3 months out of the year. I'd like to bring somebody out and let them work those 3 months I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, no kidding. So looking back, maybe your earlier years farming, was there ever a point where you're thinking, like, what the heck am I doing this for? Or maybe you just had a couple rough years and started to question your thought process of going back to the farm?
No, I never really. Even on the bad years, it seemed like I was always upbeat enough about it that it never really got me down when we had bad years. 2012, we had a drought and the tornado, so that was probably one of the rougher years when that happened.
What makes you keep coming back for more?
Yes, definitely come back for more. It's a new challenge for the day. We don't mind taking on a challenge.
You mentioned you, I think, started off at what, 600, now you're close to 5,000? Was that
Yes,
just spread out through all the years? Or I know you
yeah,
doubled at one point, but just slow, gradual growth?
yes. After 87, when we doubled it, from then on, we keep just adding slowly. And then my son started buying, and my daughter, she bought a farm too. And it's just been a slow continue. And then we pick up other ground. Neighbors see how we're doing something. And when they lose their farmer, they come and ask us to do it. Just like we got a dairy close to us, and we custom plant corn for them too. We've got about 600 acres we put out for them. So planting time is very busy. We run a 24-row planter, and it's running all the time. It's just one of those things that once it gets running in the spring, it's quite a task to get everything planted because you want to get it all done timely.
Has there been a lot of consolidation in your area?
Very much so. I think it's going to get worse too because, if you don't have a father or somebody that you can work with to help you get started, it's about impossible with the cost of equipment for young guys to get into it. It's just prohibitive. I think it's going to keep growing. Farms are going to have to keep getting bigger because I know several guys around us that are going to be retiring and there's nobody to replace them. If you don't have somebody in your family that has the desire, because I've talked to a lot of people over the years. I've got involved with the weed organization, and I talked to a lot of people there that don't have anybody to take over the farm. So when they get done, they're selling the farm or they hire somebody else to come in and custom farm it for them. I got involved with a small grains board, which is a checkoff, just like a corn checkoff. We got a wheat checkoff for the state of Ohio. I got involved with that. So I started locally and just at the state level, and then I got a chance to go to the U.S. wheat board, and I got on the board for U.S. wheat. I got involved with that enough that I decided I wanted to be the chairman of U.S. wheat. So I ran for chairmanship, and I got voted in. And the year I was chairman was with the year Mr. Trump was doing all the trade deals with the different countries around and putting the extra tariffs on them. And he made the people unhappy. So I traveled around the world to try to help soothe the pain of the tariffs and that. Because if they work with them, they'll eventually make the tariffs a lot smaller. So I was in Brazil at a meeting, and I had to fly back early to New York City to a different meeting. And that meeting was the signing of the trade agreement with Japan. There was like 40 people there, and I was standing about 4 foot away from President Trump when he signed it. And after he signed it, he turned around, he shook my hand. I shook the Prime Minister of Japan's hand, the one that got assassinated a few years after that. And then 2 months after the signing the trade agreement with Japan, I got invited to the White House for signing the trade agreement with China. And I was in the second row right behind Ivanka Trump when he signed the bill with China. So it was a very interesting year. I flew 98,000 miles and
$98,000.
and I was on 5 continents and I was gone 73 days that year traveling around the world.
That sounds like quite a year.
Yes, it was to meet so many different people. And one thing I learned about when we were talking to the millers, no matter where we were, they really wanted to talk to a farmer. They didn't want to talk to some executive. They wanted to talk to a farmer. We've had a couple trade teams come here from overseas and tour the farm because they want to see how farmers do it and that.
I bet that was probably a pretty surreal feeling sitting there as Trump was signing that.
Yeah, and then you look at the people around, like the one with China had all the big CEOs of Ford and General Motors and Chrysler and that all sitting there. I sat by the CEO of eBay, and I'm a small farmer out here that you can't hardly find me on a map, but I'm traveling with all these major executives of these places. So it definitely was quite an experience.
So a lot of those big companies were pretty involved. So it wasn't just grain trading that you guys were working on.
Now, we were just a part of that big bill that he wrote with China. Now, the one for Japan, that was a smaller bill. That was just more of the grain, the wheat crop, because they were going to increase the tariffs on it. So,
Did you feel a little bit out of place when you were sitting there with all those executives?
yeah, it's like when I went to Japan, we had a meeting with all the executives and that of their wheat. 80% of the milling capacity was represented at that meeting I had, and I had to stand up and talk to them. And you look around the room, and it's like, this seems unreal, that they want to hear what we have to say because we were the farmers. And that really impressed me. And I found that out one meeting. I was in Malaysia at a meeting, and I sat there for 3 days, listened to different programs, and they wanted me to give one overview of the farm and our family and that. And I had a slideshow I put on, and that night after I gave that presentation, it was like there was a whole new group of people there because they wanted to talk to a farmer. They thought I was an executive sitting back in the back of the room. But after they found out I was a farmer, they wanted to talk to me. And that really left an impression on me then as I traveled around the world.
Yeah, most people don't get what happens on the farm. They just see it as grunt work.
Yes, that's what I would recommend to anybody that gets involved with your organizations like your corn growers or your soybean growers or your wheat growers. Get involved. You can learn a lot. You meet a lot of nice people, and everybody's got the same motives in mind when they get on these boards to promote our crops around the world.
Was that probably one of the most interesting stretches you've gone through your time farming?
Yes, it would have been because it left a lot more to my son to take over because I was traveling so much. And probably one of the harder times I had to leave, we had double crop beans in the dryer and we were drying them because they were way too wet. And the dryer caught fire on a Saturday. And I stayed up all this night, Saturday night, emptying the dryer and refilling it. And the next morning, then I called my son. I said, we're going to go to church. You think I should start the dryer up? Said it ought to be okay for an hour. So I went to church. And when I came back out of church, and my father-in-law called me and he says, your grain dryer's on fire again. It's like, oh no. So went flying home and tried to get it out. And we worked on it a while. And the hoses got froze up from the night before. So we had trouble getting water on it. And we finally got it partly out. And I kept watching my watch. I was supposed to fly to another meeting. And I told my son, I said, I got to take off and go. I said, I'll miss my flight. And he says, I can take care of it.
Did he take care of it?
Yeah, he did. They weren't too happy with me leaving at first, but they understood. I'd traveled so much and they were ready for me when I got places, which makes you feel good and they respect you.
What was causing the fires?
The soybeans were so wet, we had to run them through so slow. There was pods because you couldn't clean them up real well because they were green yet. The pods would stay in front of that heat too long and it would make them catch fire. We talked to the dryer company and they've never dried beans that wet before. And They gave us a couple of suggestions, taking some screens out so the heat went to the top of the dryer more than holding it down to the bottom where you do with your other grain. And we got so we could run them through. We had to run them through twice then, so you could run them with enough speed that the pods didn't stay in front of that flame so long. We didn't lose very many, but the second time we emptied the dryer completely out on the ground and had to pick them all back up, which was a major task. But we got them all hauled in, blended them off, and came out good. We had good beans that year. They averaged almost 40 bushel the acre that year. We had all that
Really?
problems.
Not too many years you get 40 bushel beans.
No, that is a double crop.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for a double crop, that's pretty good.
Yes, we're shooting for 20. That's our goal usually is 20 because you can make money at 20 because you can use different varieties of seeds and that. You don't have to be real specific because Mother Nature tells with the daylight hours, beans will start potting earlier. As soon as they get so many hours of sunlight, they know that this is when they got to mature. So they put on the pods earlier than what usually do. And it's worked out really well for us. We've done them for over 20 years now, double crops.
Is that a majority of your acres, double crop?
No, whatever we raise in wheat, we usually put a double crop behind it. We don't raise as much wheat as we do corn and soybeans. Too much time to do wheat because when we do wheat, we got to bale all the straw and then you turn around and double crop them and then you got to strip till that. We strip till all the ground and we got to get all that done before it freezes. Our falls are very busy. Comes from beginning, the first beans you cut to plant your wheat. Then you get all your beans done once, and then you switch into your corn, and then you got to switch back to beans. Then you got to have all your strip tilling done because we strip till instead of conventional tillage. We do conservation tillage on everything. We try to incorporate any fertilizer we put on, and we put cover crop in between the rows of corn. When we strip till it, we got a 30-inch row, and then we put 2 rows of rye in between where the rows of corn are going to be. So when it comes up in the spring and it's growing good, that it doesn't affect the corn plant. It's in the center of the rows, and all we do is kill it. And it makes a good mat then to help hold your moisture when the crop's small to get better root growth and that. But strip till has been a big plus for us. We started no-tilling. We were one of the earlier ones in our area here to strip till because we saw the advantages of it. So we took advantage of it and we made our own strip till machine because what we could buy was not what we wanted. We modified it tremendously, put fertilizer tanks on it. And then we had to put seed tank on it so we could plant the rye and add it to the frame so we get more seed in the ground.
So you're putting seed on at the same time you're strip tilling your fertilizer?
Yes.
Makes sense. Why not?
Yeah, we put fertilizer in the slot for the corn and rye in between the rows. We try to go 10, 12 inches deep with that strip tiller so that it's just not a tickling. We are in a heavy clay soil here, so it gets compacted too much. With the strip tiller, we can go through and loosen it up so you get better roots growing then.
You're going that deep, huh?
Yes. It takes a lot of horsepower. It'll take over 400 horse for 8 rows. Our clay is very stiff.
You're only doing 8 rows at a time?
8 rows at a time. We're talking about adding on to the bar and trying to make it a 12-row unit. That's one of the things we want to work on early in the fall here if we can get to it, because we found an old strip tiller that we got 4 rows that we got off of it. All we got to do is modify our frame some more and we could have another 4 rows because my son got into motors when he was in college. He got into truck pulling. So he got to do a lot of maintenance on motors and that, rebuilding motors. So he rebuilt a motor in one of our tractors and it's got over 600 horse now on a tractor, about 640 horse. So we can pull a bigger unit. It's just that we haven't found one that meets our specifications. So we're just going to have to make one ourselves.
Is that why you're limiting yourself to 8 rows? Is just the power needed?
Yes, that's why it started out that way. because it took too much. We didn't have a machine big enough originally, didn't have enough horsepower to pull anymore.
You're essentially deep ripping going that deep.
Yes. And it's got closing coulters. So when you rip through there, it roots it up, and then these coulters hold it together so it doesn't fall out of the row, because you want to keep that row a little bit higher if possible, so that when you plant it in the spring, it's on a ridge instead of in a hole.
For erosion purposes.
Just for germination better. If you got low spot and water stands on it, it won't germinate and grow as well. So if you can have it on that strip and the strip's just a little bit higher, it keeps the water off of it a little bit more.
I've heard if you're strip tilling and the rows are going down the hill, that's where the water's gonna run right in those strips and erode stuff out. I didn't know if that's why you
Yeah.
were doing the ridges.
Now we are flat. We had one field we had put tile in it, and it's a half mile long. It was 1 inch of fall in a half mile.
Really?
So that's one of our flatter farms, but most of our farms only have 2, 3 inches of fall. We are completely flat right here where I'm at.
I thought it was pretty flat where we're at, but it's not that flat.
And we got to go a little ways before we get a ground that's got any hills on it and that. I always laugh when I go to Southern Ohio how it rolls so much and compared to what we are here for flat.
Where I grew up, some of our flatter fields are probably 5-foot elevation change across half a mile, and I thought that was flat. If you're 10 feet up and there's no timber, you could see a long ways, but not near as flat as you.
Our grain leg is 150 feet tall, and you crawl up on top of it and you can see the neighboring communities. Like Payne is, I think it's 8 mile over there, and Antwerp's 6 mile, and Hicksville's probably 12 mile. You can see the grain elevators at all these elevators from the top of our leg up there. That's how
Really.
flat we are.
I'm sure there's variation in Ohio too. There's probably spots where it's rough country, like medium roll, and then where you're at flat as can be.
Yeah, so when we go trucking some of this grain around different areas, we find the hills. They got one place, there's a ski resort we go by, so you know it's hilly there to have a ski resort. They don't have a whole lot of snow. Usually they make a lot of artificial snow, but that's how rolling it is that you got a place like that.
It changes a lot as you go across the country, doesn't it?
Yes, it does tremendously. I always thought Iowa was so flat. They talk about the fields in Iowa. Well, you drive across Iowa and it definitely has rolling. It's not flat by any means.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. To us, it's flat, but apparently not.
Yeah. No,
So looking back, what is one of the biggest lessons farming taught you about life?
you got to be persistent because you have bad years. So you got to keep plugging away at her, and it's worth the effort in the end. I guess that's the biggest thing. Get involved as a community in that, and I think that helps a lot too.
Sometimes if you keep grinding, it all balances out in the end, doesn't it?
Yes, it's interesting to see the world. I traveled all these places and I saw some really nice stuff. And when I get home, you got all that, and then you can travel and you can look for all the bad stuff. In every country I was in, got into the poorer areas where the people were hungry and didn't have houses that were mounted a little bit of nothing. And it's like South Africa, you got a real change down there. But when you come home, it's nice. I live in the country, but I'm close to town. And I say there's bad places every place in the world, and that includes Chicago, Illinois.
You
Because,
live in Chicago?
no way.
I've never been.
I've been there before. We got lost one time and got on some back streets. And we were so glad we got back to the main drive because it was scary.
Oh, I bet. Even Des Moines, Iowa, they got places like that. You gotta watch your back where you're driving.
Yes. About like when we were in DC, we have a meeting in DC every year when I was on the wheat board. And it was 2 blocks away from the motel. There was a homeless shelter. And you had to really watch walking by there because there were so many homeless people standing around, gave you an eerie feeling.
Yeah, most of them were probably harmless, but you never know. You might run into a bad egg.
That's right. Most people are good overall. Just takes the one bad egg and makes it bad for everybody.
You know, I think we talked about this yesterday, but as we get ready to wrap this up, we have a question from our previous guest that I will share with you, and I'll have you answer that. And then once we get done there, we'll have you come up with a question for the next guest. How's that sound, Doug?
That sounds good. I've been trying to think of a good question though.
We'll get something, but I think this question's going to fit you perfectly. In your farming career, out of all the opportunities and whatnot, do you feel like there's any that you look back at and maybe I think you worded it as out of all the opportunities that you had and maybe you couldn't make it work at the time or you passed on it, are there any that you look back and still regret? Or do you feel like all your years farming, you're happy with how things went and you wouldn't change anything?
Oh, I definitely changed a lot looking back because when you're buying ground, at the time you're buying it, you think it's, oh my, this is way too expensive. I can't hardly make the payments on it. I would have pushed myself a little more on buying ground because ground went up so much in value that you look back and, oh, that was a cheap farm, and you passed on it because you thought it was too high. So I guess that's the biggest thing that I would push a little harder on trying to buy more ground at a cheap price. What we call a cheap price now. Who knows what a cheap price is now?
Is there any one farm in specific that just sticks out that you wish you had right now that you passed up because maybe you thought it was too expensive?
No, there isn't any one farm because when we were growing and I tried to pick up new farms, we always look for a farm that's in terrible shape between trees on the fence lines or little drainage installed or just poor fertility. The poorer the farm, the cheaper you can buy it and you can turn them around. I bought some ground that was in horrible condition and take out fence lines, level the fields and put fertilizer on. It's like night and day. And that's the biggest thing. And I would definitely push a little harder to buy more.
But you just don't know. Land seems really expensive now, but what's it going to be in 20 years?
Yes, I agree. We just don't have a clue.
Perfect. That was a great answer, Doug. If you got a question for the next guest, I can pass that on and we'll see what they have to say.
I always think that one thing a person needs to do as a farmer, since what I've been involved with, is to make sure you get involved with your local ag people, the farm bureaus and that, and you'll get involved and try to get with your corn growers or your soybean growers or whatever you grow the most of or get involved with. Since what I've seen, it's really helped me as a person to go see all this stuff. So I recommend highly to get involved with your local organizations.
Do you have a question for the next guest that you want to see what they answer?
I guess the biggest thing I would say is, do you think you can get involved? Try to get involved with your community in that.
Okay, yeah, what they're trying to do to get involved to spread awareness and educate people.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't have another guest lined up, but we'll see what they have. I know we're traveling for the next couple of weeks with meetings and stuff like that. Hopefully, we get this podcast launched here in a couple more weeks. I think you're the seventh person we've recorded with.
I guess there's one thing that we haven't talked about is using traction. I really enjoy using traction. As we do so much ourselves, I get way behind on paperwork. And with traction, I got it connected to my bank. So my checks actually make it into my accounting system earlier. So I get to the end of the year, they're not all not in there. A lot of them are already in there. And that's one of the big pluses that I like about traction is connecting with your local bank.
What year did you start using Traction? What were you using before?
I use FarmWorks, what I had before that.
And you had to manually enter all your transactions.
Yes. And then you can make mistakes when you're manually entering them. This way, it's already in there and it comes from your bank, so you know it's got to be right. I think that's a big plus.
You said you're doing a lot of custom work too.
Yes.
Are you using the land agreements to make that easier?
We do it all by word of mouth and shake of hands, and we have very little contracts. that we got signed. We got a few that are with companies and that are a little bigger, that have more, let's just say, oversight. They got people that are doing the bidding, and that are the okay of the bidding are just officers in the company, so they want it all on paper.
On the custom acres, are you buying the inputs and then billing the customer back?
Yes.
See, with the land agreements, how they work is you can write up your land agreement ahead of planting season. So you write up these land agreements ahead of planting season and say, okay, the landowner is responsible for seed, chemical, or whatever, and that just sits in the background, and you have your unit prices from the accounting side of things. So anytime a field record comes in that's tied to those fields, it automatically gets assigned the price, how much product you use, and you can just hit send invoice to farmer, and it calculates all the costs associated with that field. So you could just send the farmer a bill in a matter of a couple minutes.
Yeah, that's something that we need to use on it that we don't, because we know what, well, it's like we got our wheat fertilizer for this fall. We got all that paid for already, because trying to beat the markets, or try to be ahead of the markets before they go up too much. So we could have all that in there, and like you said, it could pull it back out. But we do not do that right now.
Are you using traction to calculate your profit and loss per acre?
I just use it more as basic accounting. Then we use spreadsheets, because with two of us involved, we're both paying part of the bills, and then we got to throw that into one pot and split it back up. So until I get him on traction too, it's hard to split everything up. When I retire, he's going to have to take over, and he's going to find out what I've had to do, and he's going to have to do it himself.
He'll figure it out soon enough, won't he?
Yes, one way or the other.
I appreciate your time. We'll definitely have to stay in touch.
Okay, sounds good then.
All right, thanks, Doug.
Thank you.